Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we are going to start Unit 9 Sovereignty with topic Sovereignty and Globalization New Challenges. The modern world is often called the global village. Global means the increasing interaction of the inhabitants of the world that has been hitherto unknown in the history of mankind. It is also seen as the process of integrating the national economy, culture, technology, and even governance into a global system. The global interconnectedness, which is both reality as well as a necessity, has thrown many challenges to state sovereignty. State sovereignty today does not mean state autonomy, or in other words, the right to do anything it likes. We know that the sovereignty of the state has never been in doubt, but it has always been under strains. It has never been absolute except legally. The limitations on state sovereignty were recognized by Bodin, Hobbes, Hegel, and Austin during the days when globalization was not on the agenda of internationalism. Today, globalization has become a fact of our times, a fact that has raised many questions regarding the state and its sovereignty. The following aspects pointed out by David Held need our attention. With the increase in global connectedness, the number of political instruments available to governments and the effectiveness of a particular instrument has shown a marked decline. Border controls have lessened, and flow of goods and services, ideas and cultures has increased. The result is a decrease in policy instruments, which enable the state to control activities within and beyond its borders. State has experienced a further diminution in options because of the expansion in transnational forces and interactions, which reduce and restrict the influence particularly governments can exercise over the activities of their citizens. The impact, for example, of the flow of capital across borders can threaten anti-inflation measures, exchange rates, and other government policies. In the context of a highly interconnected global order, many of the traditional domains of state activity, such as defense, communication, and the like, cannot be fulfilled without resorting to the international forms of collaboration. As the demands on the states have increased in the post war years, the cooperation of other states has become necessary. Accordingly, states have had to increase the level of their political integration with other states so as to control the destabilizing effects that accompany global interconnectedness. They have to strengthen, for example, organizations like the International Monetary Fund and the World Trade Organization. With the growth of a Vast number of institutions and organizations, a basis for global governance has already been laid. The new global politics involving, among other things, multi-bureaucratic decision making within and between governmental and international bureaucracies and the like has created a framework in and through which the rights and obligations, powers, and capacities of the states have been redefined. The sovereignty of the state continues, but the sovereign structure of the state is heavily influenced by global tendencies, besides those found within the boundaries of the state itself. Now, let us move to the next point that is sovereignty and power blocks. The development of global system of states as it appears in the form of numerous power blocks has immensely influenced states' authority and integrity. This is clear from the following. After the Second World War, the world was divided between the two blocs led by USA and the USSR. Both of them exerted a great influence on their bloc members in the operation of their domestic and foreign policy. This was the reason why India and many other non-aligned countries refused to join any of the two blocs, because in plain terms it meant putting restrictions on the country's sovereignty and accepting the dictates of the bloc leaders. After the disintegration of USSR, we have a unipolar or multipolar world in which the states are dependent on each other. The USA exerts a large measures of influence on the domestic and external policy of many states, especially the small and the weaker states. The dominance of USA and the USSR in their power alliances constrained numerous states from making decisions themselves or independent of their bloc leader. The NATO North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the SEATO, the Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, the CENTO, the Central Treaty Organization, and OS, the Organization of American States, all under the American influence, and the Warsaw Pact under the Soviet leadership gave merged international choice to their respective member states. Held says a state's capacity to initiate particular foreign policies, pursue certain strategic concerns, choose between alternative military technologies, and control weapon systems located on its own territory are restricted by its place in the international system of power relations. Each of these military alliances has its own structure, its own procedure and methods of functioning, and its own policy as developed by the member states. But the influence of the leader goes unquestioned, and the other member states have limited options to operate on, giving the NATO example. HULD says its NATO concern with collective security has trodden a fine line between, on the one hand, maintaining an organization of sovereign states, and on the other, developing an international organization which operates de facto, if not de jure. according to its own logic and decision making processes. The NATO is an example of the supranational organization in which USA commands while the other member states merely submit. But even without a commitment to a NATO armed conflict held says state autonomy as well as sovereignty can be limited and checked. This is because he continues the routine conduct of NATO affairs involves the integration of national defense bureaucracies into international defense organizations. Such organizations create trans-governmental decisions making system which escape the control even consultation of any single member states. They lead to establish informal and yet powerful trans-governmental personal networks or coalition outside the control of and accountability to any national mechanism. The membership of NATO or any other power bloc does not abolish state sovereignty, but it certainly compels the member states to compromise on many issues. Now, let us move to the next point, that is sovereignty and global economy. In economic field, no country can claim self-sufficiency. One sees the rise of global economy in which national economies have no option but to readjust and redefine their priorities and goals. Here, following points need careful attention. The internationalization of production has been made possible through the organization of multinational corporations. These corporations work across the borders and function outside the domain of national sovereignties. The multinational corporation MNCs says held, plan and execute their production, marketing and distribution with the world economy firmly in mind. Though these MNCs have a national base, the nation from where they originate, their interest is always global, as is their strategy. The states do little in controlling these corporations, while these corporations have much to do in guiding the policies of the states where they operate. The financial organizations such as banks are becoming global progressively, no matter from where they function, London, New York, or Tokyo. A greater role is being played by the new information technology in so far as it has in mobilization of economic units, currencies, stocks, shares, and the like for financial and commercial organizations of all kinds. With the technological advancement in communication and transportation, the separate market boundaries necessary for independent national economic policies are losing importance. In spite of the fact that the distinctive identities are kept preserved, markets and societies are becoming more sensitive to one another. To a certain extent, the possibility of a national economic policy has accordingly reduced so as to suit itself to the claims of international financial and fiscal system. Likewise, as Held says, the levels of employment, investment, and revenue within a country are often subordinated to the decisions of MNCs. As no country is itself, especially in economic matters, The states have to organize themselves regionally and globally. There are such groups though loose as West West, North South, South South, East West, the developed and the developing. These groups do affect the economy of each individual state. Thus, we see that the internationalization of production, finance, management, and distribution is unquestionably eroding the capacity of each individual sovereign state to do what it wants to do. No country, howsoever strong it may be, has control over its future economic policies, for it has to affect and get affected by the economic policies as they are pursued globally. There is a definite diminution of state autonomy in the face of the world economy. Here we want to wind up today's lecture. Thank you so much for your attention.